Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to decode exactly how the most successful AI companies are cutting through the massive market hype to actually get found and funded in 2026. Look, if you've been watching the tech space lately, you know the landscape is moving at absolute breakneck speed. But for founders just trying to survive, investors placing their bets, or enterprise buyers looking for a solution that actually works, it can feel like a chaotic maze, right? So today, we're breaking down the hard data to see what truly separates the hidden gems from the household names.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. When every single company claims to be an AI pioneer, how do early-stage founders actually capture market share? Because we're seeing so many AI wrappers out there, just thin software layers slapped right over ChatGPT, that it's making the market incredibly crowded. The fundamental challenge right now isn't just building great technology. The real challenge is gaining competitive market visibility when the noise is literally deafening. To really grasp what founders are up against today, we have to look at the massive numbers driving this whole machine.
To understand the stakes, look at 2025. Top AI startups raised nearly $150 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. $150 billion, that's a B. That accounted for over 40% of all global venture capital that year alone. Think about that. Almost half of the world's startup money going to one single sector. It left other industries like traditional SaaS or direct-to-consumer brands absolutely starved for cash, while foundation model companies just scooped up over $80 billion of that pie. Capital is flooding the zone at historic, totally unprecedented rates.
And the momentum, it is only accelerating. In just the first week of 2026, Elon Musk's xAI closed a single funding round worth $20 billion. We're seeing valuations scale from zero to unicorn status in a matter of mere months. Just look at Almarina, for example. They launched, quickly became a household name for developers, and boom, hit a $1.7 billion valuation less than 4 months later. Valuations are scaling at warp speed, and the barrier to entry, or at least the barrier to being noticed, is honestly higher than ever.
And then you've got frontier model giants like OpenAI hitting a mind-boggling $500 billion valuation. So the landscape can feel overwhelmingly saturated for a new entrant. If you're an emerging AI startup, you aren't just competing with other startups anymore. You are trying to cast a shadow in a room dominated by half-trillion-dollar behemoths. It's the ultimate David versus Goliath scenario. How does a tiny startup even begin to compete with that kind of gravity?
Well, notice the trajectory in this KPMG analysis, which really proves that this isn't just hype. This chart models the very real impact of generative AI on U.S. real GDP all the way through 2050. Rapid Gen AI adoption is projected to boost annual GDP growth by an additional 0.30%. Now, I know that might sound like a tiny fraction, but at a national scale, that translates to trillions of dollars in new economic value. Plus, the analysis shows that capital investment opportunities, we're talking the data centers, the massive GPU clusters, the energy grids, they are expected to peak around 2030. The physical and digital infrastructure is being laid right now, which means the window to build a foundational market presence is wide open today.
Which brings us to Section 1, the traits of winning AI startups, moving from macro to micro. So, the crucial point we need to ask is, within this massive economic expansion, what specific traits actually separate the startups achieving unicorn status from the ones going bankrupt?
Okay, the first major differentiator we see is in product architecture. The real winners are moving way beyond simple chatbots and basic prompt engineering. Instead, they're building autonomous, agentic workflows. Why? Well, because prompt engineering still requires a human in the loop. A person has to type, wait, review, and iterate for every single task. Agentic workflows handle end-to-end multi-step tasks totally autonomously. Imagine a private equity due diligence investigation. Instead of a junior analyst searching databases, downloading files, and writing summaries for 3 solid weeks, an agentic workflow is triggered exactly once. It scours financial databases, flags regulatory risks, summarizes 500-page PDFs, and delivers a finalized risk matrix while that analyst sleeps. 24/7 autonomous operations. That shift from reactive chat to proactive automation is exactly why the sector is seeing a massive 41% compound annual growth rate.
And this brings us perfectly to the shared characteristics of the hottest 2026 startups. First up, unprecedented speed. These are companies hitting $100 million in annual recurring revenue in under 2 years. Second, there's a hyper-focus on enterprise B2B over consumer apps. And third, they're totally dominating specific vertical niches. Take a platform like Ambience in healthcare.
They aren't just some generic medical chatbot, they're an ambient AI scribe that listens to complex patient visits and drafts clinically accurate charts instantly. Or look at Harvey in the legal sector, which is custom built for complex contract analysis. The secret is, they aren't trying to be an AI for everyone, they're becoming the indispensable AI for someone specific. Which brings us to Section 2, the new discovery engine, mastering AI visibility. Because let's be honest, having an incredible vertical agent isn't enough if literally nobody knows it exists. To actually get buyers to find you, successful startups are mastering something called LLM SEO. This is absolutely crucial because large language models are now the primary discovery layer for enterprise buyers and investors. Look, enterprise buyers just aren't scrolling through 10 pages of blue links on traditional search engines anymore. It's way too slow. Instead, they're feeding their complex workflow problems into ChatGPT, Gemini, or Perplexity and asking for a curated list of vendors. It's slightly ironic, right? Using AI to search for the best AI? But here's the kicker. If your brand's digital footprint isn't strictly optimized to feed these models the exact right data, you simply won't be cited. You won't exist to the buyer.
And the data here is incredibly stark. In competitive AI categories, a handful of brands get cited repeatedly by these models, while everyone else remains totally invisible. Think about your own habits for a second. The last time you asked ChatGPT for a software recommendation, did you look past the top 3 names it gave you? Probably not. If your startup isn't actively building recognition within these AI-driven search engines, you are going to lose your spot on the buyer's shortlist to the competitors who do. It creates this massive, ruthless, winner-takes-all dynamic when it comes to brand awareness.
So, how do founders actually pull this off? Well, startups are shifting visibility tracking from a nice-to-have to a core business metric. They're executing strict AI discoverability checklists and auditing their brand visibility across ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity so they know exactly how often they're mentioned. Plus, they are using specialized platforms like Profound to track citation depth against competitors. Essentially, a tool like Profound lets a company see exactly what prompts trigger their brand name in an LLM output. By reverse engineering this and feeding the right technical documentation and PR out into the web, these tiny startups effectively hijack the recommendation algorithms of the world's most powerful AI tools. They manipulate the Goliath to recommend the David, drastically lowering their customer acquisition costs in the process.
But, of course, here's the reality check. You can't fake it forever. The market is completely saturated with big promises and AI-written marketing fluff. Ultimately, optimizing for visibility gets you in the room, sure, but replacing manual work with true, intelligent, agentic automation is the only thing that keeps you there. As the research notes, growth and real usage matter way more than hype. In 2026, the startups that actually win will be easy to use, solve highly specific problems, and grow through real, measurable demand.
So as this $150 billion market consolidates over the coming years, the startups that master both vertical utility and LLM visibility are the ones that are going to absolutely dominate the landscape. The growth curve is accelerating right toward a massive peak in 2030. So looking at the data, the historic funding rounds, and this total evolution of search, who do you think is going to become the very first $1 trillion AI company? It is a fascinating space to watch, and I really hope this explainer gave you a clear look at how the real winners are playing the game.